Cool. Hey, everyone. I think we're live. It's Joe here, gut health dietitian. I'm with Michelle from Happy Inside, who's a gut-directed therapist. Today, we're going to be talking to you guys. The topic is called Why Do We Sabotage Ourselves When Doing Well? And we're going to talk about this in the context of, I guess, diet or lifestyle changes, because, of course, that's kind of our specialty. But I'm sure this applies to actually pretty much anything in our lives. So before we jump in, if you're watching live, please say hi. I want to make sure the comments work. So just say hi. Say where you're from. That's always fun. And then we'll get started. For some of you, when you comment, it's not going to show your name. So just so you know, in case I call you like Facebook user or something, it's to do with, I don't know, this Facebook's terms of service. It depends on what permissions that you have. Okay, so just FYI. But I'll do my best to keep an eye on that. If you come up with any questions, you guys watching us, let me know. And okay, good. So let's start with this, Michelle. So the topic is, why do we sabotage ourselves when we're doing well for a time? And I guess that means like when I've been making progress. Let's use food intolerance as the example. So maybe they're making progress with diet changes. Maybe they're doing some mindfulness or gut-directed therapy, and they're getting changes. Why does that happen? Should we talk about what is sabotage in the first place?
I think the most simplistic answer for why does it happen is because we're complex human beings and we have histories and memories and experiences and behaviours and feelings that make us complex. So we're going to dig into
human nature
today.
It's human nature.
It is, yeah, human nature. That's why we're so complex. But yeah, self-sabotage really is about kind of, undermining or getting in the way of our own goals, essentially, of where we really want to be, but instead doing something differently. So you might be going along, maybe you've started some, elimination diet, you're doing really well for a number of weeks. You're feeling enthusiastic at the beginning, and then it starts to get really tough. So you revert to your old behaviours because, well, maybe it's easier that way. And so that's probably. Do you see that happening in your clinic, Joe?
Yes.
Yep.
All the time.
Yeah. But I think it's probably. Guys, I want you to know it's actually more common than it probably isn't, as in I would say, yeah, most people are falling off the wagon at some point in time.
Well, what I was saying to you is like, so we come up with the topic based on what the clients vote for. And I think it's like 90% of people voted for this topic. And I think it's just really a small sample of what the population would vote for. And like 90% of people would also vote for this because 90% of people are doing this. And it's probably higher. And of course, you'd be doing it some capacity. I certainly do it with many of my goals. I kind of, where to start? But like, is it something that it's human nature? So it's like, hey, maybe it's something you should just be okay with. But then I guess we're kind of looking at people who kind of feel out of control by that, right? Or the sabotage occurs so often or is so great that they feel it ruins or gets in the way of further progress. So yeah, we definitely want to look at like what are the I don't know, ways to get out of that. But I think it's important to understand, well, what could cause it, right? So did you have any ideas? Why do we do this?
Yeah. Going back to the human condition, really. as I mentioned before, you know, we all have histories, right? We have ideas about who we are and what we're capable of based on our upbringings. It always goes back to that. So, you know, we learn about who we are from our caregivers, essentially, and what we can do and what our capacities are, and how good or not good we feel about ourselves. And therefore, that's going to determine, I guess, those complexities, you know, the level of complexities. If we're fortunate to grow up in a way where we feel really safe and secure, where we're encouraged, where we're acknowledged and validated, where we're not berated if we don't get something right or perfect, but instead we're supported. We tend to grow up with a better sense of self-worth, and self-esteem and self-confidence. And so we come into the world knowing it's okay if I have that goal ahead of me, if I want to achieve that, then I know I have the capacity within me to do that. On the other side, as probably where more people are sitting, is that if I grew up in a place where I was berated, and I never felt good enough, and I never felt worthy, and I need to, you know, do things perfectly to know that I'm good enough, then that's a really harsh place, you know, to grow up in, and it sets us up for our life, for our adulthood. So we come into the world with really high expectations for ourselves, and very critical voice, essentially. That's probably the biggest part of self-sabotage, is that critical voice. You know, it's the internal narrative or the story that we tell ourselves along the way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so lack of self-worth is the stem of all instances, most instances.
No, I mean, not all of them. But if you have chronic self-sabotage, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
We can fix that off. But if it's, I mean, you kind of touched on a good point before, like if it's just a little bit, you know, here and there, you know, if it's not a main theme in your life, then yeah, we can kind of have some kindness towards it, you know, and we should have kindness towards it anyway, because ultimately, if we're self-sabotaging, then we're in pain in some way internally.
Okay.
And that requires compassion.
Okay, compassion. Let's definitely circle back to that. So if I just go to the comments quickly.
So many people. Hello, everybody. This is exciting.
Hi, everyone. Alicia from Sydney. We have Kathy from North Carolina. Lauren Withers. Hello. Welcome. A couple others who it hides the name, at least in this software. It will show you your name wherever you commented. Oh, Jez Renaud. Hi. I think Jez is the person who introduced me to you, right? Okay, and so Lisa Damiani's on, and she said she posed this question in our client group. Lisa, so you put here feeling like a failure. Do you want to like elaborate a little bit, comment a little bit more about what you mean by that? But whoever's watching live now, can you do you identify with what we're saying? I mean, I'm trying to think of how we can make it like a yes or no. Do you feel like you self-sabotage or not? For those who are watching, just give us a yes or no. I would like to get a feeling of what people think. And in the meantime, Michelle, let's talk about compassion. I think was the last thing you said. So we need to start there. If it's chronic self-sabotage, then it's typically coming from a place of low self-worth. And then so you've put here, do you believe you deserve to feel good or to reap the rewards of the efforts? So is that something you ask, just someone should ask themselves if they're not sure? Is it a self-worth thing or not? Maybe it's not that clear cut.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, it can be a pretty telling question, I guess, whatever the answer comes about. So, and it may kind of split a little bit. Part of me feels like I am worthy of that, but most of me feels like I'm not. I can't get there. I stand in my own way. It's too hard. And so it might not come across. You might not hear the words, my self-worth is low. You might hear, it's too hard. I can't do this. It's complicated. I don't have the skills. I don't know what I'm doing. It may sound a bit more like that. But absolutely, it's really about, what do I see for myself? And a point that I kind of missed there was about having those goals. So sabotage is about standing in the way of our own goals, right? So first of all, we need to make those goals really clear, which I have no doubt in your program, those goals are extremely clear, Joe. But the thing is, we need to have those goals lined up with really strong desires and feelings, right? Because we're feeling beings. So we tend to be driven more by feelings. So this is where it comes back to, to self-sabotage. I mean, you guys can probably get a sense of this within yourself. If you're self-sabotaging, just say you're going along, you're working with Joe's group, you're feeling really enthusiastic, you've got some great guidance and support, everything's there for you, and then however long you've moved along and suddenly you're now eating things that aren't part of the elimination or part of the challenge, and you're feeling really bad about yourself. So when, of course, you're feeling bad about yourself, it's really hard to then pick up any remaining self-respect and self-worth to continue on. So when we feel bad about ourselves, we tend to behave worse. So it perpetuates the cycle, right? So we go, oh, bugger it. I've eaten this today. I slipped. I did this one thing I shouldn't have eaten. I'll just eat bad for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week or until I see the dietitian next, and then I'll confess then. And so that's what happens. So we just feel bad about ourselves. So we keep going instead of the compassionate approach, which is, you know what, I'm human. This is really hard for me. And I'm struggling, and knowing why you're struggling internally, and then just saying, just because I ate one thing that, wasn't really on my list to eat, it doesn't mean I need to go around and puncture my other 3 tires, right? I just need to repair the one tire, and I can do that. And I know that any member of your team, Joe, is always there and also supportive. And so any of your members can, text and contact you guys straight away to say, hey, this happened. And please do that. If any of you do that, don't puncture the other 3 tires. Contact whoever you're working with and say, hey, this has happened. Can you help me?
So do you think a part of practicing self-compassion is to own what happened, or to tell someone, or to reach out to the consultant, or not?
Yeah, because otherwise we start to bring in levels of shame, you see. So shame loves secrecy. It just it grows exponentially in secrecy. So if you're if you've engaged in a behavior that you don't feel good about, share it with somebody who cares about you, who can support you, who can hear you without judgment and criticism, and who can, build you back up and remind you that it's okay. Because we don't then we're already struggling with self-esteem or self-worth, and then we're going to add shame on the top, and shame's really heavy. So that's probably going to blow it out. So yeah, I would say reach out and talk to somebody to help you get back on.
Mm-hmm. So that's great then what Lisa's done with submitting this question, and now she's sort of in the comments sort of adding to that. She's certainly not letting that shame breed and grow in secrecy. She's already done the first step in sort of owning it almost. I think it's really important that it's just like, hey, this is what's happened. This is me, and I would like to improve on that. Where do I start?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. We want to be acknowledged, and we need to validate, whether it's for ourselves or someone else does, to say, hey, yep, I see what's happened here. I see how you're struggling, and it's okay. That's the key. And it's okay.
And change and growth and progress, it is challenging. You do have to come out of your comfort zone a little bit sometimes.
Yeah.
To create new patterns, because old patterns, the brain does like to go back to what's comfortable, doesn't it? That's some evolutionary thing, I think, where we just like to stay safe and familiar.
Yeah, so much. Absolutely, you're right. It is safe and familiar for us to stay in essentially the same neural pathways. So if you think about, I've got a diagram to show you in a minute, but if you think about an electrical cable, right? Think about one that connects up inside your house, and it's really thin, right? It's a really small cable. And then you go out onto the street and you look at the electrical cables out on the streets, and they're huge, fat cables, right? The amount of charge that's going through those cables out on the street is incredible. That carries a lot of energy. And the ones that are inside, the little tiny ones, the amount of charge that goes through them is less. So those neural pathways that we've used since we were young, they're the big, chunky cables. And when we have kind of associations, essentially, thought processes, patterns in behaviour, they're looking to jump over to other charged cables. So if you got two cables in your mind, the big, thick, charged one that's always been there, and the other little one that you're building in, then naturally that it's going to jump to the really thick, charged one. So you can feel it. I know everybody's here tried something new or tried to change something in their life. I have no doubt about that. And you can feel almost the resistance, how hard it is to stop it kind of going that way, and to have to forge a new pathway and a new pathway and a new pathway. So neurobiologically, that's what we're dealing with, and which is why they say, it takes time to create a new habit, because we have to build those new pathways and simultaneously take the charge out of the old ones.
Yeah, it is certainly possible to build the new pathways, but it takes the repetition. And through repetition, it becomes easier and more natural. When you're talking about that analogy, I think about my phone. So when I'm bored or waiting for something to load, or the ads come on television, my instinct is to pick up my phone, and I'll do it even like it's subconscious. And I bet you everyone watching knows exactly what I'm talking about. Where now I'll sort of catch myself with my phone in my hand, and like it's almost like that wire is big and thick now, and I'm just going there automatically. And this really wasn't a big deal, say 10 years ago. So it didn't exist then, but I've over time forged that. And now it's something I'm actively trying to move away from. Does anyone else know what I mean by that? And is that the right example? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, that's exactly. And I love that example, because actually you make a really great point, which is it wasn't even there in the first place. You're of an age that you didn't even grow up with a mobile phone. No. So it wasn't there in the first place. So you just grew an entire new cable.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I used that cable over and over, and to the point where I subconsciously can grab this and start using it. And it's fascinating, but it does mean it's never too late to change. So let's go to some questions because I think some of these are timely. So let's see. So Lisa said, I had a good family life, but it's true, I didn't feel safe. So circling back to what you've talked about in the beginning, are you saying, Michelle, that self-sabotage with food is because I'm uncomfortable at the moment, so I reach out for comfort, e.g. chocolate and wine?
It is definitely an option. Absolutely. That is definitely an option. And of course, this would require some kind of inner investigation for us to know at that moment that you have the urge to reach out. That's the moment where you pause, you kind of give yourself a timeout, and you come into the feeling. What am I feeling right now with this urge to go reach out for the chocolate or the wine? Especially when it's strongest, then that's going to help us, or it's going to inform us what's going on underneath. So we'll investigate that. Why is it? What's under that urge? Is it discomfort? Is it unhappiness? Is it boredom? Is it loneliness? What's going on under there? Because likely that the chocolate and the wine is not going to be the most effective solution for it. And so we want to find what the reason is, and then a solution that's actually going to meet your needs.
The thing I always talk about with this topic is the hardwired need. Like, why am I going for that, for chocolate or wine? It's to do with the hormonal response you get, right, in terms of your neurotransmitters. So the dopamine that gets fired off when you think about chocolate and wine. And the act of, I'm about to have chocolate and wine, and even having it, but as soon as it is done, it goes away. And then that's where guilt creeps in, or shame. So Lisa, the reason you're self-sabotaging is kind of what we spoke about. That's very, very much to do with many things, but in this instance, if it's from a young age, like, it does circle back to kind of self-worth. But then why am I using food to go to comfort? And that's actually to do with the reward circuitry in your brain. And over time, you've trained yourself to get that feeling that your brain thinks that you want from food or wine. And that wire, like when I use my phone, is very thick and strong, and we want to default to that. But it's about forging some new wires with other things that can provide that same response in your brain, but it's not something like food or wine, which is, there's nothing wrong with food or chocolate or wine, but if it sabotages the progress you want to make, then that's where we're looking to fix it, I suppose. Because for some people it isn't an issue, and then there's people, Lisa, who aren't using chocolate or wine. They use other types of alcohol, or then you've got like more extreme substance abuse, or they do online gambling, or it presents in all sorts of ways. And it doesn't have to be something crazy like that or illegal or anything like that. But it's also, I think, just food is kind of the common one because we all eat, and we've all been exposed to that from a young age.
And the thing is, it works. It works, but only in the short term. That's why we do it, because it works. I'll put my own hand up. I love chocolate for two reasons. One, it soothes me. Two, it's also my reward. When I'm really happy, I eat chocolate. It's like my happy place. And, going back to old pathways. So when I was a kid, so my mum was really strict with our food. We weren't allowed junk food, and our junk food was corn chips or low joule cordial with soda water. That was junk food in our house. And so on occasion, Mum would buy us these Freddo frogs. So for anyone who's not in Australia, we have these little, they used to be 15 grams, but now they're 12 grams. They're these little chocolates that are a frog, essentially, just plain milk chocolate. And so guess what my very favourite chocolate is now as an adult? A Freddo frog. not even a bar of that same chocolate, the Freddo frog, because it's
Right.
nostalgic for me, you see. So that's my go-to place. But also, I haven't eaten refined sugar for the last month. And if you want to know what your triggers are, then then go off the thing that you're eating, that you've got an urge to eat, you know, that comforts you. Go off it, because you're then left with that feeling, because you can't soothe it, right, by reaching for the chocolate or the wine. So it means then you're left with that feeling to investigate, well, what is that? Why am I doing that? You know, and actually then you can take a moment to think, and this is what I do. Oh, I might get an urge that comes up. I'd really like to have some chocolate. And then I'll think forwards ahead in time and go, if I drove to the shops and bought some chocolate and ate that chocolate, then how would I feel eating that chocolate, and how would I feel after that chocolate? And I literally just think through that, and then after a minute I go, oh, don't need the chocolate. It's just nothing. I'm not going to get anything out of it. So you guys can try that if that's something that's happening for you.
Okay. I think this kind of, is it that simple? And Lauren has asked, so is this a self-discipline issue or is something more or less?
All right. Great question, Lauren. Thank you. A little bit, but not entirely. I would say it's more complex than a self-discipline issue. However, we require self-discipline to overcome it. So I'd say that the core of it underneath is not just because you don't have any discipline. There'd be other reasons for that. But the application of a new behavior becomes or requires self-discipline. So maybe we can, I guess, and this is where we come into how do we overcome it, right?
Yeah, so we can move to that, but just to try to summarize what you said for Lauren, because I'm also trying to learn. So it's not the fact that you sabotage is not a self-discipline issue, but the way we solve it does require discipline. And so if you've been unable to solve it, knowing what to do and having the correct things in place, then that's where we start to factor in discipline. But with the initial issue, it's not a discipline problem, because I think then we start to point the finger at ourselves, or that can lead to that negative thought process and being very critical of oneself.
Oh, absolutely, Joe, because if you don't attend to your humanness underneath first, you're essentially invalidating whatever your experience is. And none of us like to be invalidated. It's not a good feeling. So if you invalidate that just by mowing over it, ignoring it, pushing it aside, and saying, if I can just apply, with that whip cracking, if I can just apply enough self-discipline, then I'll get through this. But it goes back to my very first statement today, which is that you're human, which is why this is hard. And so you must attend to your humanness underneath. So the first step in that is really to investigate the core of it. Each of you that are on here today talking with us are going to have your very own unique reasons for sabotaging. And we need to know what that is, because when we get right to the core of it, we're automatically acknowledging and validating what it is. We're kind of treating you as a whole person. And then that informs us about what's important to you. How do I want to feel? Okay, so if you want to feel safe or comforted, then we need to find ways that are effective to feel safety and comfort, that also help you reach your goals. So you can have both. They're not exclusive. You know, you can meet your goals and feel comfort and safety and all the things that you want to feel at the same time. So it's investigating first, you know, what is underneath there, knowing all about that, what your needs are, what's important to you, and also recognizing the behaviors that you don't like in yourself or that diminish your self-respect. Because self-sabotage does that. So we need to kind of know that first, and then to find ways to build in behaviors that increase your self-respect and self-worth. Can I show you a diagram?
Yes, yes, please. I think everyone would like to see some sort of visual representation of that. Let me try to get you on the screen.
Okay, cool. Yeah, more screen. Cool. Okay, so this way. All right. So just say what we've got here is you. These are your neural pathways in the blue down here. And you essentially have, actually, I'm going to just color something in for a moment just to represent that huge, thick cable we were talking about. Here we go. So if you're stuck in kind of self-sabotaging behavior, what's happening is you are, this screen's back the front, this way. You are being pulled in this direction by all that charge. This is a behavior that you normally do. So it's that critical inner voice. It's self-diminishing. So if you listen to what's going on as you're sabotaging, you'll hear words that probably aren't very kind towards yourself, and they're very devaluing. And so no one feels good when they're self-sabotaging. It's not a great feeling. And as I mentioned before, you're more likely then to keep self-sabotaging because you don't feel good about yourself, so who cares, right? On the other side, we have your objective. And in this situation, your objective might be, to assess your dietary needs, whatever they are. If you're doing the low FODMAP diet, then you're, doing a form of elimination first, right? And then you're challenging, reintroducing. And so we need to know then the main objective up here might be, to experience full health and well-being. But we know if you do those, then what you have is increased self-worth, increased self-esteem. You increase your sense of self-mastery and therefore your confidence. Now, at the moment, this is going to be that really thin cable. So as you're kind of moving through your life, this one is going to pull you in this direction. And so this is where the self-discipline comes in, that we need to keep going in this direction, because what we're essentially looking to do, and I'll just put this down so I can make a change to it. What we're essentially looking to do is this. So we talked about the cables before. As you use this one more, then this one lessens. So more of this, less of this. Does that diagram make sense?
Yes. Yep. So how do we, I guess part of making that transition is we need to identify what's going on with these behaviors, or like, are these subconscious, or like where should someone start if they're like, yeah I self-sabotage all the time, whether it's like all the time or every once in a while, but you've identified it as a problem. Where do you start?
So it's investigating, the core of that. What is it underneath? And is it, sometimes we're not always aware to our sabotaging behaviors because they're so ingrained. they tend to be unconscious. I mean, if we stopped and thought about it, we could go, oh, yeah, I can recognize that. But during our daily life, they're probably unconscious because we're just acting on urges all day long, right? So we want to kind of come back and investigate. We need to know, what are the thought processes that I'm having? What are the feelings that I'm having? What are those urges that are coming up in me? What are the belief systems that I've developed across, the course of my life about this? Where did they come from? And also, what are those behaviours that I'm exhibiting that are either, getting me to my goal or not, or especially those behaviours you're exhibiting that are self-sabotaging. We need to be really clear about what they are. Otherwise, we can't change anything. The first, step in change is self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what we do first. So that's what I do with clients, in my clinic. We get out of this thinking mind and we come down into, because I mentioned before, you're a whole human being, and those belief systems and feelings about yourself, they live down here. They're not up in your head. You might have thoughts about yourself, but those thoughts are usually related to those feelings. And so we want to kind of investigate those and see what's happening underneath. And that's with care and kindness and acknowledgement and validation. It's really important to recognize that you're just a being in this world who's struggling your way through like everybody else, right?
Mm-hmm. So we need to be, awareness is stage one of change. Any change is awareness, in this instance self-awareness, and going through that process with kindness is important for yourself. But how do you implement that, like with your clients? Is it like I tell people you need to write things down, or you need to get things out of you onto where you can then observe almost. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it needs to be very clear. So we figure it out together. So we get to the core of it together. And then we need to have that symbolic somewhere, because you won't, I love writing. So if you can have a Post-it note, that's stuck on your wall, or whether you journal, whatever it is, but you need to have something symbolic to help you remember what's on that green side. So what's my objective and how do I want to feel? Because if you can have that and you're standing at the fork in the road, then what happens is you get to make an informed, conscious decision. Do I want to go down this old red pathway that's only going to end up feeling like this? Or do I want to go down this pathway? And you can literally stand at that fork in the road, walk down each of those pathways, imagine and feel them both. And I guarantee you the one that you'll choose is the green one. Because it feels better, Now, the great thing that happens is once you do that a couple of times, once you resist being pulled in that other direction, and you do that a couple of times, you actually start to build this kind of inner enthusiasm. It's a sense of self-mastery, right? Because you resisted something that was old and that you now know is not good for you. And you moved in the direction of something that is good for you in so many ways, not just for your dietary interventions or your lifestyle, but also for your inner world. It's all good for you. So you do that a couple of times and it starts building in, oh, wow, I can trust myself here. I do feel better about myself here. I really respect myself that I made this decision today when it was so hard, right? So that just builds in more and more and more. And then there's a natural motivation to want to move that way. So you keep making that decision. Keep doing it.
Yeah, okay. So that helps you overcome, because what's essentially happening is when you get to the point of, I'm going to sabotage my progress, it's then becomes a question of instant gratification or the long-term gratification. That is, of course, we all know the important thing and the thing you're striving for. If you're whatever you're doing in life, but when we sabotage, instant gratification is winning, and that's typically, it basically means your brain getting that dopamine feeling for the action you do. That's winning out, even though you're already aware that doing this means slowing down your progress to this. So it's a matter of getting very clear on what this is, I guess, and then that means articulating it, getting it down on paper. Am I kind of on the right track there? Is it like, oh, I want to get to this end goal. How will I feel when I'm there? What will my life be like? And that should be enough to help me resist this instant gratification of chocolate or wine or whatever it is.
That's right. Yeah. And seeing that big goal, and how will it feel to reach that goal? But how will I feel as well? And how will I feel along the way? How do I want to feel now? Right now, I want to feel better. I don't want to have the hangover effect of just downing a bar of chocolate. And then, that's going to make me feel physically probably yucky, but also I'm going to feel bad about myself. So maybe thinking, that's why standing at that fork in the road and thinking about each of those paths can prevent you from taking the wrong path in the first place.
So this fork in the road, thinking about the two options, it's like, I used to read these books when I was little where you get to like page 6 and it's like, all right, now if you choose this, you have to go to page 27. And if you choose this, and it's kind of like you stop and you think about it. So how do you make that happen at certain instances in the day where I guess you need to identify, okay, where does this self-sabotaging behavior occur? What's a trigger? Do you need to like put a post-it note or sticky note, like to remind myself to like stop and think or consider, like what's the exercise there to make it practical?
Yeah, exactly. It's self-awareness, so it's knowing this goes back to that investigating and recognizing those behaviors in the first place. So we need to know, what are the behaviors that I do? What self-sabotage look like in my life, right? So we've got this big list of what are exactly all those behaviors. And so whenever you find yourself reaching for, having an urge to, or doing one of those behaviors, that's where you put the timer on. You pause. Don't engage anymore. Completely stop, and then stand at that fork in the road. And you want to look at those two places, a very informed decision. It's like you're reading a map. If I take this direction, that's where I'm going to end up. Is that where I want to be? Or if I take this direction, I'm going to end up there. And is that where I want to be? So we want to try and get to it before you've gone down that path already. It's not a problem if you did go down the path already. It's still self-awareness. But then that's where you catch yourself after you've eaten a chocolate bar or, had a glass of wine, and bring yourself back in and say, okay, let me look at my objective again. Okay, this is where I ended up, but I actually realize now that I want to be there. So that's okay. It's still self-awareness. But remember, that's where the compassionate approach comes in, because if you're going to do finger wagging and let that critical inner voice come back in, you're going to end up in the same place again. So we need that kindness to come back.
And this now circles back to the comment about self-discipline. So this is the phase where discipline, where we want to work on that discipline aspect, or where that comes into practice. It's the most important trait. I heard a good quote about it recently. It's something like motivation is doing something when you feel like it, and discipline is doing something when you don't. And I think very, very profound, because it's short. I could remember that one very well. So like, we're motivated, we sign up to the programs, we feel like doing it. Well, motivation is not what gets you to your goal. It's discipline. It's about implementing even when you don't feel like doing it anymore. And that's it's like that's a muscle. It's not that you got it or you don't. No one has it or they don't. You need to practice it, and show up. And even if you don't, this is the other thing I don't like about the word sabotage. it's like, even if you have, like this comment, for example, when I have a little treat, it's okay, but then I have too much. So it's like, even if you sabotage, like, that's okay. It's fine. It happens. You're human. This comes back to what Michelle's saying about the self-compassion. But like, we are, humans are, we're a bit like, sometimes we make things very dramatic when perhaps it doesn't need to be a big deal either. So it's like, okay, I had this day was terrible. Okay, fine. Tomorrow's a new day. We go again. It doesn't need to be, well, yesterday was so bad, and so now, and that was Friday, and now my Saturday, well, I'm just whatever. I'll just go off track and I'll start again on Monday. It's like you just compounded the problem so much worse when it wasn't sabotage. Yes, it was slightly off track, but it's almost like it's part of the process. So how do we get people to, not, it's so easy to feel sorry for ourselves. Like, I've kind of broken my ankle, and it's, I find myself like poor me. Self-pity. You've been eating, rubbish, or I said I would go to the gym. I haven't been going as much as I normally would, not even close. Like, and I see myself also going down that path, but I kind of, because I talk about it all the time and I teach people, so I can identify it straight away. But I'm human as well. It happens. How do we forgive ourselves when we have this sabotaging moment, and then just like get back on track? Because people kind of spiral.
Yeah. Maybe it's like you said, it's not always sabotage. I'm like, where's the line? What do we call sabotage and what's not? What's just, as in just, having a bit of enjoyment, or I was just participating in something. And maybe sabotage goes back to when we investigate those underlying reasons that we engage in that behavior in the first place. So maybe having a little treat is not sabotage. Maybe it's that I enjoyed some dessert with my family, on the weekend or something. That's not sabotage. That's just participating and feeling included and, enjoying yourself, right? But then maybe it turns into self-sabotage when you then ate an entire, tub of ice cream after that because you felt like sliding. And so you gave in and you did that. That would be the self-sabotage. So it's, it is forgiving yourself if you do end up in that place. But I wonder if there's really a behavior to forgive so much as just, coming back to recognize, I'm just human and these are the reasons why I did it. Often when we know more about ourselves, when we have those reasons, then we can show more compassion towards ourselves. Like you haven't been going to the gym as much, Joe, and maybe that's just about, it's harder to get there, and maybe I'm using my time differently just while I'm healing. Maybe there's just an adaptation to make that's okay to make. If you feel okay about it within you, then it's okay.
Okay. What about, so Lauren's put a question here that I think is interesting, and this is going back to you trying to visualize or get clear on your goal, your long-term goal, and how you might feel then. Or so what if they don't know how their goal feels, for example, like this comment?
Yeah, is that the question, Lauren? Like, what do you mean by a lot of us don't know how that feels? If you're still there, could you send a quick message?
Comment, Lauren, but my understanding was it's kind of like, we're talking about, say, instant gratification versus that long-term goal. And it's like, well, what will help you navigate past that instant gratification when you're at the fork in the road is to really focus on like that end zone. Oh, this is, my life will feel like this, or it will be so much more worth it that I won't give in to this, whatever it is. But what if you don't know how it feels on the other side?
we have to build it then. If you don't know how it feels, if you've never experienced it, then great, thanks, Lauren. Good work, Joe. Then it means it's there. It's actually there within you. It's just that you don't know that it's there. But that's our job. That's our job, which is to, come into your inner world and know what's important to you and know what it is that you need. So none of us are without that. It's just whether we have awareness of that or not. And there's no wrong or right about that. It's how we were brought up. It's whether it's part of our reality or not. But it's there. So I want you to trust that it's already there. You just need the tools to access it. And then once you know that, that's going to put you in a much stronger position. To get probably an even stronger position. Because if you don't know and then you do know, wow, you've got like this spotlight that's been put on something that's probably exciting for you.
Some people want a copy of that diagram that you had. Do you have anything in print already or something like that?
No, but I'll make one and I'll send it through to Joe.
You could just also take a picture of the whiteboard, like in good lighting, and send it to me.
Oh, yeah? Okay. I'll do that. Okay.
Send it to me an email. And then you guys, I can, I'll add it in the comments or wherever the video
hold it up for people now?
Yeah, if people want to screenshot it, you can do it now.
I just have to get on there.
Yeah, the lighting kind of sucks. I think you should, because the light bounces off it because you've got light in front of you, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
I think just take a picture of it and send it to me. It should be fine.
Okay.
Hi, Kanani's here. Hi, Kanani, good to see you here. Let's see. Let's quickly cover everything. I'm mindful of the time. Kindness is important. We talked about that a lot. If you don't have that aspect, if you're not working on that aspect, then this becomes very difficult. Not only in the first stage, right? Of it seems like this compassion and kindness is like a fundamental part of this process. And that's the part that a lot of people struggle with the most. Do you think? Do you recommend affirmations or there's so many different ways to go about this, right? How do we quieten down these negative thoughts in our head?
Affirmations can work for some people, but what I've come to know about affirmations is that they must be true for you, and that because if they're not true for you, then you're kind of, it can actually feel kind of dysregulating. If you're repeating something to try and convince yourself that you're something that you want to be, what can happen is the internal dialogue, which if it's self-critical, it'll be reminding you very strongly that I'm not that. And so you end up feeling worse about yourself. So as long as affirmations have been created from you, or you found one that really resonates with you and that feels true within you, then go for it, for sure. But it always comes back to really investigating and knowing your inner world, why you're having those thoughts in the first place. Because otherwise, they're just Band-Aid solutions. We're just trying to apply something on top to help us feel better, when in fact we need to resolve it from its core underneath, from its foundation.
But going to the core and working from the foundation is so intimidating, or I think it's perceived as difficult.
Yeah, overwhelming, confronting. However, you live with it all the time. It's already there. It's the niggle, it's the tap on the shoulder, it's the gut symptoms, it's the anxiety and worry in the head. It's already there. We're just going to weed out all the noise so we can actually hear what it is. That's all that is.
I like that. All right, let's wrap it up. Thanks everyone for coming on. I hope you found this useful. And obviously, there's only so much that we can explore in the time. It's already like an hour, but you can see like this is why we do what we do with clients, and it does take some time. But if you've got a system to follow, and people to guide you, then you can get to your destination. Whereas doing it on your own, it quickly becomes overwhelming. Anyway, I brought this comment up because just to sort of wrap it up, but I think just to show you, Michelle, that like what you've said has had an impact, even if it's just on one person. So yeah, you've got to. I think I really like that line, which is the first thing you've said, right? We're human, and you've got to allow yourself to be human first and foremost. So start with that. Yeah, and this comment, it just screams at me like an all or nothing mentality, and it has to be the number one thing I see with clients who struggle more than others. Is the ones who struggle more have a very much an all or nothing mentality, and usually it shows up in every aspect of their life. And the problem with all or nothing is there's no balance there, is there? And humans are very much about balance, homeostasis. And I think if you've got things in your life that are out of balance, whether external and certainly internal, you aren't going to get very far. So in this particular example, like Michelle said, having something kind of off plan, and then like they don't have to be mutually exclusive, where it's like I'm either on plan 100% or I'm off plan and I'm sabotaging myself and I'm getting nowhere and I'm a failure. Actually, it's about finding some balance here. So I think for a lot of people, it doesn't need to get to the point of self-sabotage in the first place. But anyway, I thought this was kind of like a good note to end. Did you want to add anything to that, Michelle?
No, I agree. And I just love the room to be human. I just love the spaciousness in that. There's just so much. So I hope everyone can give themselves some room. I think we all need more space.
Good one. Thanks, you guys. So yeah, I'll make sure I get the picture, the diagram from Michelle, and we'll post it in the comments. I could even make a little post about it based on what we spoke about. Cool. If you want to learn more about Michelle, by the way, where are my little banners here? happyinside.com.au, AU for Australia. Yeah, there's some things there, right? There's your podcast as well, and there's an app on iPhone.
Yeah, new podcast episode went up yesterday too.
Oh, cool. What's it on?
Do you know I've forgotten?
Put you on the spot.
I have
blank.
I completely forgotten. You have to go on and have a look.
Yeah, she's forgotten. You'll have to go and subscribe and check it out yourself.
It's a marketing tactic. No, not at all.
Yeah.
I truly have forgotten what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, if anyone needs help with the diet aspect of the food intolerance and they feel like they're not getting anywhere, like please comment or send me a message. Okay. And we'll make sure we get you back on track or get you started. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.